Hello, this is Wade Frazier. This is March 19th, 2026, 3:09 p.m. I recently did a video post on Ralph McGehee, my friend, who was a case officer at the CIA for 25 years. Um, and this post, I'm gonna get into basically the whole spook world, CIA, and the global elite, and basically the relationship of them. And I have unfortunately, lots of experience in this area, lots of data points, lots of trading notes with people. Um, and I'm going to give my views on the issue. And it's a very odd topic in ways. And yeah, it really is. It's really something. And it's huge, vast, deep. And how important is it? It has a it has a part to play in all of it. And we get into it. So here we go. Um, I'll preface this with saying that when it gets into the issues of spooks and global elite, CIA, all this stuff, almost nobody on Earth really has a balanced and informed perspective on the issue. And this is part of the problem. In fact, it unfortunately, or it's just what it is. My life has intersected a lot with the spook world just because of what I've done, what my friends have done, my colleagues have done. And so we tend to attract attention of the spooks, understandably. Going after the biggest event in the human journey will tend to do that. And there's this, yeah, so it's really something, and this is something that I've from the very beginning I saw this kind of stuff where um and again I've mentioned before where the first alternative political information I ever saw was right-wing conspiracists, because that's the kind of stuff that Dennis attracted with his approach. And so I saw a lot of that, and we were targeted by the global conspiracy. So, a lot of it made sense to me. Except I also found that there's a lot of armchair conspiracists out there who are really fixated on the issue, but it's their perspectives are really distorted, and it's really tribal to a degree, some evil out group, and it's kind of the level of tabloid speculation and titillation and paranoia. And I've seen this over and over and over again over many years. The political left tends to focus on structural institutional analysis. Ed Herman's propaganda model is a structural model. And that's well and good. And structural models are great. What the left tends to do, though, is fixate on structural analysis and deny the conspiratorial aspects altogether. Michael Perenni wrote an essay on the conspiracy phobia of the left. And the right tends to have conspiracy philia. And so both of them, in my opinion, are both lopsided perspectives. In fact, they both come from a victim mentality also. And so it's a thing where if you're in pursuing the truth and world healing and this kind of stuff, the perspectives have to grow beyond, again, right-wing conspiracism and left-wing structuralism. Both they're lopsided. They only see part of the picture. Only a comprehensive perspective, I think, can really get it done. Yeah, so the left with this fixation on structural analysis tends to deny spooks altogether, or focuses on the bureaucratic aspects of the milieu. Like Ralph McGehee. He was as you call him, a paper pusher for the CIA, with a GS rating and a pension and a salary, etc. That's just one arm of the CIA. There's this whole other arm of it, most important arm, which is covert action, which is involved with overthrowing governments, assassinating political figures, this kind of thing. And the CIA has been involved in that up to its eyeballs from the beginning, overthrowing the Iranian government there in 1953 was one of its very early successes in how to overthrow governments. In fact, John Perkins, the economic hitman guy, he said that early in his education, his training as an economic hitman, he was taught that after the CIA overthrew the Iranian government, then there was actually a concerted effort to privatize covert action. So do it not with employees of the CIA, but do it with contract agents and stuff. And so that then there was no paper trail, et cetera, and accountability. So the United States government could really never oversee that stuff. It was privatized. And so this is what Perkins was taught, and I'll buy that. Yeah. And so the left, again, they're their conspiracy phobia, which is again, and then the left almost uniformly denies there was any conspiracy behind John F. Kennedy's murder, led by the likes of Noam Chomsky. And so anyway, so this what I've seen is this battle between obsession and denial. Denial on the left and obsession on the right. These two lopsided perspectives on this whole issue. And it's really they're both stuck, and it's counterproductive in my opinion for them to both be stuck where they are. And very few people can get beyond that stuff. And so it takes very special people to get beyond these places where you can get stuck. Again, I've been associated with this world from childhood. My father had to get a top secret security clearance to work in mission control at NASA during the space race. My astronaut colleague Brian O'Leary, he had to get it again. In order to become an astronaut back then in the 60s, you had to have a top secret security clearance. That was part and parcel with it. So you had all this already, this national security spookish stuff. And there's lots of overlaps between the military and the spooks, the CIA. Again, friends that have been involved in Vietnam, et cetera, you'd see these issues where there'd be essentially CIA personnel, and you'd have special forces personnel, and you'd have military contractors, and they'd all work together on missions, et cetera. So this was all, the lines get really blurred, and in these kind of operations. So I've known many people who are in Vietnam. Again, and encountered many people in Vietnam, again, because of my age, right? I was lucky. I turned 18 3 years after the draft ended for Vietnam. But I just have, I've known lots of people who are Vietnam vets who deserted, who, again, special forces, were contract agents, military contractors, all this kind of stuff. And some were doing off the book stuff, so they could actually, there'd be rank and file, people in the U.S. Army, but then they'd say, hey, we need you to do some off the book stuff, so doing like secret missions, slaughtering the people of Vietnam, etc., secretly, and some of the operations, to my knowledge, have never been declassified. They never will be. They'll never will be publicly admitted by the American government. This is all part of the milieu. And people who do that, people who slaughter people. And again, I've lived with 3 different people who've taken lives. Again, friends, family, etc., who slaughtered people. And unless you're a psychopath, you don't kill people with a clean conscience. You have to people have to cope with that. Again, even American soldiers coming back from the wars, they don't talk about it. No, people who've been in combat don't want to talk about being in combat. They rather forget it all. And so when people do that, when they're in warfare or playing the spook game, slaughtering people, these kinds of things, a really common fate is they drink themselves to death. somehow. I mean, again, alcohol is a favored way, but other drugs, other means. But basically they kill themselves. So they basically inebriate themselves to death, as a close relative did, who was a CIA contract agent who worked for Henry Kissinger. When Henry Kissinger had no official role with the American government, getting back to all this privatized stuff. Yeah, so Kissinger had a stable of CIA people working for him, and Kissinger had no official role with the American government at the time. So this is, yeah, and I saw this as a young man. I saw these kind of things, long time ago, and so, and my relative who drank himself to death, I don't think he ever figured it out. Not like Ralph McGehee did. So Ralph McGehee finally understood that he wasn't one of the good guys after 16 years of the CIA. I think my relative never figured it out that he really was not one of the good guys, but drank himself to death instead. So, and this is not, none of this is new. There's all this kind of cloak and dagger, secrecy games, sneaking up on people, all this kind of stuff. I mean, you can go back to chimps. Chimps would perform surprise raids on their neighbors to catch lone males foraging by themselves and kill them. Eventually kill off all the males and then take the territory and the females and then slaughter the infants. And the hunter-gatherer humans also did this. This is something that's, yeah, this has a deep past, and going all the way back to chimps. And in fact, we move up to the agrarian epoch of the human journey and civilizations. Machiavelli wrote that more princes succumb to ruling class conspiracies than through warfare. Yeah, so secrecy, deception, cloak and dagger violence, all this kind of stuff. It's very old. And so the stuff we see with the CIA, and Blackwater and the global elites, etc. This is just an old game, taken to new levels in ways. Again, commensurate with our increases in technology, etc. So they're just better at the game than they used to be. Yeah, and in a world of scarcity and fear, I think this is what we have. This is going to be a natural consequence of living in a world of scarcity and fear. And in fact, the global elites understand this. This is why they try to prevent a world of abundance and love from coming into being, because their game won't work any longer. They understand this. Yeah, and so global elites, what I call global elites, I think they began their rise to prominence with Europe's conquest of the world. And again, my accompanying post to this gets links to all these discussions. When I did my book preview a couple of years ago, I had a chapter on that, on the rise of global elites. And the global elites, the ones I'm referring to, the people who offered my partner Dennis Lee $1 billion a full operation before they lured the boom on us. Those global elites have mastered the secrecy game and deception game so well that almost nobody in the world knows who they are. And so, in fact, the left denies they even exist. Yeah, so radical leftists deny, they just say ideological position, or they deny that such people could exist. And delusional, but that's their position. Yeah, until you've encountered this world. Yeah, go try to bring disruptive energy technology to the marketplace, then you're going to find out if you survive the experience. Yeah, so the global elites that I'm referring to do not include retail elites. And retail elites are politicians: Donald Trump, Bill Gates, Elon Musk, David Rockefeller. These guys are what I call retail elites. And none of those guys are close to the top of the world power structure. Of course, Rockefeller's gone. Yeah, sitting American presidents are puppets. And, Gates and Musk are nowhere near, even though Musk is nearly a trillionaire, he's nowhere near the top of the global power structure. And again, I had to live through a lot of this before I ever started trading notes with fellow travelers and encountering other people who've been through similar situations. And I've heard many hair-raising tales over the years from people who participate in them and people that are very close to them. And yeah, I stay away from third-hand rumors. There's a ton of that out there. I don't report on stuff that I've gotten experienced people close to me experienced, straight from the horse's mouth. For those who survived the experience. And again, through Brian O'Leary, I first heard from Brian that the intelligence field is one of 7 cartels that control the global economy. And I'm not going to challenge that idea. When I heard that from Brian, I had seen the all 7 in action to one level or another. I'm like, okay, I'll buy that. But what I also saw was the intelligence field and its methods basically serves all the other cartels. And so there's a lot of overlap. And in fact, they all interlink at the top. So it's to separate it out and kind of look at it in isolation from everything else is probably a dubious undertaking because it's very integrated into the global power structure. Yeah, and again, there's many levels. Again, there's the global guys, there's the national people. Mobsters play the same game, right? Inner city gangs play the same game. All that kind of stuff is the same. Put on pause for just a second here. Okay, so yeah, so we again when the voice in my head had me move to Seattle, I landed right in the middle of Dennis Lee's organization. I mean, it was in the process of being wiped out by organized suppression. And there was a contract agent worked for the electric companies who, again, he was responsible for the death of one of Dennis's employees, which radicalized Dennis in his energy pursuits. And yeah, and then for the next several years, I got witness and experience organized suppression coming from. And again, some of this I didn't, it wasn't until years later I figured out what some of it was after I traded notes or other information from other people. But we had organized suppressions coming from the global level, the national level, state level, county level, local electric companies, all this corporations, this kind of stuff. So yeah, it was we encountered all of that. And the CIA man who offered Dennis $1 billion to fold the operation, he was just an errand boy for the global elite. And in fact, my guess is he also agrees instead of spending $1 billion to make us go away, they $10 million under the table to corrupt officials could get a similar result. Similar, although we live to try again. When the sheriff's deputies in my hometown of Ventura, California, stole all of our technical material in the raid from our chief researcher's office, that likely ended up in the hands of the global elite. That'd be my guess. And we had, again, encounters with the so-called white hats and black hats from the beginning. From the time I became Dennis's partner, we were hearing from the black hats and the white hats. Offers to buy us out, encouraging phone calls at night from the white hats, all this kind of stuff. And, I had a close friend back in those days who was kidnapped by, I'll call them the white hats, for an exotic technology show where he was shown anti-gravity, free energy, these kind of things. I mean, a whole host of technologies that blew his mind. And then I've gone down to Mount Adams several times to watch UFOs, hosted by James Gilliland. And James got involved with free energy until... In fact, technology was very similar to what Sparky Sweet had. And again, solid state, free energy technology that got cold when it ran, this kind of stuff. And anyway, but then the spooks came running, people died, and James and his scientist buddy realized they were in over their heads, and they wisely ceased their efforts. And I've heard the global elite called very organized crime, and that makes sense. I'll buy that. And in fact, with the CIA, the mobster CIA line is a very thin one. It's my relative who worked for Kissinger, etc. I heard mobster stories also, and again, my cop buddy who knew that 3 weeks after the JFK assassination, that Lee Harvey Oswald was not the person who shot Kennedy. He was part of a backfired CIA operation. He also encountered Jack Ruby in the 40s. And so Jack Ruby was a high-ranking mobster. He was no, two-bit nightclub owner. So there's a mobster who was definitely involved in the JFK hit, and so which was a CIA operation. In fact, the CIA probably, my guess, the CIA ran the fake one and the real one. Be my guess. In fact, that's what Danny Sheehan reported, was that Alan Dulles gave the green light for the hit. That doesn't surprise me at all, because he led the cover up also. So he ran the Warren Commission and covered it up. So all that makes sense to me. Yeah. So this, in fact, the CIA used mobsters. That's with Lucky Luciano and stuff. Uh, the World War II, OSS maybe used them. But anyway, so I mean, mobsters and CIA were like, they were buds. They worked together a lot. So yeah, it's all kind of in the same club. Um, and the CIA at Langley there, they run out eavesdrop-proof rooms. That are like Faraday cages around them and stuff, where again they can't be eavesdropped on, and they rent them out. They actually rent them out for corporations and stuff. They have secret meetings. Well, anyway, a long time ago now, many years ago, but one of again, a member of the global elite, one who runs one of the dynastic families. You've heard the name. I won't say it today, but you've heard the name. And the person who ran that dynasty rented one of those rooms and questioned one of Dennis's close associates for several hours about Dennis. And so, yeah, so I literally could go on for days about these kind of stories, these kind of encounters that I've seen over the years. And so, I don't know. For me, it's like, to the extent they help paint the picture for me, how the world works, they're important. I don't do it for entertainment purposes, and I don't think that's very productive. Yeah, this is stuff not to be entertained about. It's how the world really works, which isn't pretty. Stephen Greer, he did his Lost Century video here a few years ago, and it was good. In ways, it was very good, but it also skirted several issues, and perhaps understandably for shows an hour and a half long, how much could you really cover? And I did a video on this actually about how Greer's video tended to focus on the inventors and the organized suppression, except the 99% of us in the middle are really the most important part of that. Not the inventors and not the suppressors, it's the rest of us. Humanity's inertia is the biggest reason why we don't have free energy today. Not because of inventors that don't have the virtue, and not because of the guys, the global elite, who are suppressing stuff. I mean, they play their roles and they're important, but the 99.99% of us in the middle, we're really the reason why it is this way, not those guys. And I call these situations 1% conspiracy and 99% complicity. As nearly everybody plays along. And I saw this. So one talented provocateur, such as Bill Delp or Ken Hodgel, who were a couple of contract agents who were sick on our companies, put them in the midst of 100 average people. Like, again, people who are involved in organizations, and provocateur prevailed. And these guys were good at what they did, and they got nearly everybody to slit their own throats. Yeah, and I watched them play people like violins, playing to their greed and their fear and naivete, and witnessing that over and over again. Those are some of my life's greatest lessons. Was witnessing how easily these contract agents and stuff working for the Spooks, and the global elite, how they were able to get people to defeat themselves really easily. I mean, it was quite a lesson for me. And those guys, so I don't know if Ken Hodgel ever killed anybody. Bill Delp, again, is responsible for the death of one of Dennis's employees. But those weren't the wet work guys. So there's spooks that kill people. So again, there's a whole division of labor, let's call it. So there's people who they kill people who just manipulate and play their games. And so, and when the spooks do kill people to protect the rackets, again, the global rackets, such as poisoning Max Gerson repeatedly, or Brian O'Leary given a heart attack, after he turned down a sort of offer from the military to do classified UFO works, almost had a heart attack the next day. when they kill people in these areas, when the spooks do kill people, it's always done with great care and surreptitiously, and they really try to make it look like something else. So they're not going to double tap them. In fact, that's one of the reasons why a lot of people do survive their attempts, because they're not going to make it, they're not going to double tap them and make it unambiguous that this was a hit. You know, they try to make it look like a heart attack or cancer or an accident or, you know, this kind of thing. And they have a quite a playbook to kill people and make it look like something else. And newcomers to this field, and Mark Cummings is a good example of it, but there's many others I've seen. The sneak past them approach, to think that they're going to be able to sneak past these guys. You know, Sparky Sweet had a secret lab in the secret, not secret from the global elite, but secret from, I don't know who he was trying to be secret from, but Sparky Sweet had a secret lab where he did his, you know, developed his work for energy prototypes and stuff. And yeah, the sneak past them approach is just foolish, adolescent fantasy, thinking you can sneak past these people. They have surveillance capability second to none. In fact, I've assumed I've been under surveillance since the 80s. And I probably have been, but they just watch. And so I can't do anything about it. So I just keep doing what I do. Now, I recently wrote about the Epstein issue, Jeffrey Epstein issue, and how, and I just read a week or two ago that a guy who was an ex-member of Israeli intelligence, he thinks that the Epstein stuff, again, the Epstein operation was likely a blackmail operation that was similar to the operation that Mickey Cohen and Menachem Begin ran to get Marilyn Monroe to seduce Jack Kennedy as an intelligence gathering and blackmail operation. Epstein was just probably a descendant, again, several generations downstream from that one. And anyway, in this Israeli intelligence official, he thinks that Israel has been blackmailing Trump and supporting Middle East activities, including the war in Iran right now. And nothing in that area would surprise me. And so I'm not accepting anything as gospel and that stuff, but also nothing would surprise me. And I've written about the Epstein, discussed the Epstein issue. Definitely, there was far more than met the eye, the Epstein issue. And he was definitely up to his eyeballs in spook stuff. And that's come out. I mean, he was involved with CIA. Ghislaine Maxwell's dad was involved with Mossad. Yeah, double agents, all this kind of screwy stuff. So yeah, it's up to the eyeballs and spook stuff. And so yeah, so the surface level, the stories that we're hearing today on Epstein, et cetera, is just tip of the iceberg, I'm sure. And it'll never ever all be revealed. That's the nature of the beast. Yeah, never. The real truth will never. The unvarnished truth is never going to come out. And that's how with many events like this. COVID-19, Pearl Harbor, Jack Kennedy assassination. This is all 9/11. I mean, this is all. Yeah, the full truth is never going to be admitted by the governments. Yeah, that's not what they do. Not their job, even though we might think it should be. Yeah, so the spook world is real. It's a very real world, and it's not for the faint of heart. And when you get targeted by the spook world, your life usually gets, again, your life can get wrecked, your life can get shortened. I've lived through so much of that, and you can have real catastrophes in your life, and the spooks definitely play their role. And again, contract agents like Bill Delp and Ken Hodgel, they're part of the team. And so this is all, again, I said, like a division of labor. So there's these people like con men types, like, again, very talented psychopaths like Bill Delp and Ken Hodgel, but also people who do the wet work, who kill people. Again, my relative, he had to kill people as part of his job. That's kind of why he drank himself to death. Yeah, and so, and there are psychopaths in the ranks and that stuff, but I think they're a little more hazardous to use. They'd rather get people that are duped into it, kind of like Ralph McGehee, true believers in the mission, etc. And so, yeah. And so if it's just, yeah, nobody gets off easy. So even the spook guys, it's like their lives are, yeah, a lot of ruined lives, a lot of shortened lives among the spooks. Yeah, it's a disaster all around. I suppose our souls learned something from it. At least you hope so. Um, and the tactics. And so what I've seen, again, being a comprehensive as a generalist, um, yeah, the tactics that are used, I see it. I see the similarity all across the power structures, and so inner city gangs to global elite. At the global elite level, it's the most refined and sophisticated. There's the most, untold billions of dollars are tied up in it, et cetera. And so they're good. So at the very tops, yeah, they're very good. In fact, most people that they've intervened with don't even know they were intervened with. It's again, the game's so subtle. And again, I could go on and on and on and on and on. Astronaut encounters with UFOs and again the drug running operations that the global elite have, and or the or the 25% of their staff gets murdered. I mean, they murder their own staff when they violate the most innocuous security protocols around their drug running, et cetera. Yeah, they probably had drugs we never even heard of, and so, and again, and stuff that's really out there, the stuff that I don't even talk about, the stuff that's really out there. But yeah, there's stuff that I've heard that's like, wow. Yeah, it's hard to wrap your head around some of the stuff that goes on. And some of it's truly horrifying too. So, yeah, it's too, like Greer said, it messes people up even to hear about some of the stuff that goes on at those levels. I'll buy that. And so, anyway, but yeah, the world's real. And people in their cubicles punching the clock, going home and watching, TV shows, etc. That world, they're never going to encounter that world. And it's only when you start doing something that attracts the interest of the global elite. Again, you almost like threatens their interest, like, again, put the world's best heating system on people's homes for free, like Dennis did, or pursue free energy, or be an ex-astronaut putting on UFO conference, or hosting, UFO watches down at Mount Adams, these kind of things. You engage in those kind of activities, then you start attracting the spooks, attention from those kind of people. And then it gets interesting if you survive the experience. And so, and again, I don't have interest in these areas. I don't, for the strategy that I've come up with, singing the song of abundance, the love and enlightenment approach to free energy. If I can find the people who can learn to sing the song, the spooks are just going to slink off. It'll be game over for the global elite also. So it'll be game over for them, and they'll realize they'll understand it'll be game over. When I saw Dennis last year, I said, if I find 5,000 people who can learn to sing the song, what the global elite do will not matter. And Dennis agreed with me. And so it does not take that many people, but it takes awake, again, disillusioned idealists. It takes people who are awake, people who are guided by love, people who are sentient, have become sentient, fully sentient. And so those people are very rare on the planet. But I think there's enough of them for a plan like mine to work. So that's what I'm pursuing. So, and in the meantime, there's all this spook stuff that is real, that happens, and so many people who have, tried to make a dent end up running afoul of the global elite and the spooks, and stuff's real. And it's a real deal. But again, back to the complicity, corrupt officials are happy to do the bidding of the global elite and don't even know whose bidding they're doing. All they know is they're handsomely compensated for getting their hands bloody. I saw that repeatedly. Promotions all around. Become a judge. This kind of stuff. And so anyway, so I don't know if I'll discuss this a whole lot more in the future. Maybe I will. But anyways, that's my take on an issue that I think is important to understand the basics of it, and kind of just to know when you get into danger and when you don't, and how to avoid it. And and in the end, to ignore it. Just go, okay, yeah, this stuff's real. And I treat them like a force of nature. that's how I look at the global elite and the spooks, etc. It's sort of like when there's a thunderstorm going, don't stand on a mountaintop, you know. And so I try to do what I do to avoid having direct confrontations with them, to be directly targeted by them. I mean, I've had low level stuff like so-called skeptics dog my, skeptical stalkers and this kind of stuff, and various trolls would swarm when I would appear in unprotected venues, etc. But at this point, I've really I'm in a situation where that's just sort of under control, and I'm really shielded from that. So, and the people I'm looking for, if they come aboard and play with me, they will be shielded. Yeah, they won't be subjected to that stuff. And so that's one of my messages, as part of my strategy. So yeah, I'm trying to skirt that issue of not having to go deal with the spooks, be confronted by them, be targeted by them. That's what I'm trying to avoid. Although I had a denial of service attack on my forum here not too long ago. So, but in general, they leave me alone. And so, yeah. Anyway, that's all I have to say for now.